You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
And we are live. All right, Alison.
Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I am your El Presidente for life, Alison Tiemann, and with me today is my Minister of Subjugation and Puppers, Brian Martinez. On March 18th, 2020, the governments of the United States and Canada announced a full closure of the Canada-U.S. border to non-essential travel. With the closure of the U.S.-Canada border, the Western world is now in total lockdown. And I'm also contemplating closing the border between the right side of the Badger Cave and the left side of the Badger Cave with my cats on the other side. This comes after the stock market has seen record losses over the last 3 weeks, sparked by the COVID-19 pandemic crisis and worsened by the price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia over oil. We are in unprecedented times, unless you want to count the fall of the Bronze Age, but let's not go there yet. These are uncertain times, and uncertain times are scary times. But there is one thing I know: human beings are resilient. We reinvent ourselves and become whatever is needed to overcome a crisis. We did it when Africa turned into a dust bowl. We did it when the glaciers advanced. We did it when Umgrit burned, and when Rome fell, and when this little cat shoved her butt in my face. The question then becomes how? How do we change? What sparks it? What guides it? That's the question I've always asked, and I invite you to ask it along with me during these very interesting times. Hello and welcome again to Honey Badger Radio. Okay, this is Stuck in the Middle with You, Community Cozy Booster. I got that right.
Yeah.
All right. You okay there, Brian?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
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 Holding up?
I'm fine. I mean, Lindsay and I are doing what we got to do. Just getting through it. So.
Yeah. So there any new announcements in your neck of the woods?
Well, Chicago recently essentially put out a statement that people have to stay indoors, and if you go out, you will be given, like, they say you are out and the authorities see you, they will give you a warning to stay inside unless you go out for essential things like shopping for food or that. They've closed all the parks. And yeah, if you get a warning and then you get I think you get a citation or something after that. It's something they've said. It really can't be enforced. The city is way too big. But that was the last thing that we saw. I think that was over the weekend or something.
Well, that's and what do they consider essential services where you are?
Like where, going to the doctor, going to shop for food, gas, supplies, things like that. But if you're just like out going for a walk, or you're trying to, maybe go out and like publicly drink with your friends or something like that, I don't know. That's non-essential. But again, I don't think this can really be policed. I think they're just saying that in the hopes that people will do less large-scale social gathering. We had like a warm weekend, and when Lindsay and I went to walk Jojo, I noticed that there were a lot of people jogging because they were trying to get exercise in. And I think that because it was warmer and there were more people out, I think that's what made them decide to make this statement. Plus, there are probably parts of the city, which is really big, where there was still a good amount of, like people traffic outside. But ultimately, as I was saying before, ultimately they couldn't possibly actually enforce that. So they're making it into a suggestion that essentially gives cops the right to give you a ticket if you keep, leaving the house without, I guess, necessary cause to do so. But that was basically like the last thing that happened. I don't think that this resulted in any of these things, because how can you possibly determine what a person's need to be out is? So yeah, but that is what happened last. And where I'm at.
That's great. I noticed that the cat is now no longer bothering me. She might come back because I'm talking, but she decides to interrupt me only when I'm the one speaking, just to maximize the disruption. Well, she probably doesn't think that way. She probably is just worried about my mental state that I'm just sort of talking to myself. Maybe when you talk, Brian, she's like, "Oh, okay, there's that metal box has some sort of human consciousness, so maybe it is less likely to be insanity on the part of my owner, and more likely to actually be some sort of
Yeah,
human
she
enterprise that I
might
don't."
hear a voice and say, "Okay, so that metal box is a person, and you're talking to
Yeah,
that person.
of some kind. Yeah, I'm
There's
talking to a
a
person.
genie in
So she,
there, and it's granting wishes."
yeah,
Yeah.
so somehow it makes sense in her mind. Her walnut-sized brain. Okay, so you sent a video about Dave Cullen's thoughts on the
Yeah.
situation. Maybe
Well,
we could talk a bit about
we could
that.
talk a little bit about that. I haven't watched it all yet because I had to do this show, so I was like listening to some of it while I was setting up. I've
And I haven't
actually,
even watched the whole thing either.
yeah,
So
I think I watched like 10 minutes or 15 minutes of it. But basically, I have been talking to Dave Cullen on Skype off and on about this for at least a week. He was talking a great deal about the beer bug. And
Mhm.
when I spoke to him on Skype, he I think a week ago, he said, I'm starting to have some suspicions that this whole narrative is not everything it's cracked up to be. And he said that basically he has some suspicions around it. And I said, he was like, I'm thinking about making a video, but I don't know like how well received it would be. And I said, well, if that's where the truth leads you, you should do it. I can't tell you what to do with your channel, Dave, but if you feel this way, you should at least put your ideas out there, make sure you do the work, and like, whatever happens. And that's when he made this video. And essentially, I haven't finished it, so maybe I shouldn't speak to what the general thrust is, but essentially what I believe he's getting at is there is no doubt that the virus itself is real. Obviously, this is not about like some kind of scam, that where they made everything up to, seize control of um, the general populace and throw everyone into a panic. I don't think that's what he would make the case for at all. But that there are narratives that are either half truths or maybe even outright untruths that are woven into the facts. And it's created a situation where it's very difficult to know where to and to what scale there is an actual crisis. And so um I think that that's what he's getting at. I haven't seen the whole video. I'm inclined because I've seen whenever you have something like this, where like, I'm not saying that we've been through a lot of these, but whenever you have some kind of a crisis or something that seems like there's an possible imminent threat, whether it's economic, whether it's biological, whether it's the Cold War or whatever, there are people, there are institutions, organizations, individuals that are going to try to leverage it in their favor to either get power over people, to get resources from people, or to destroy other people. And this is no different from that. I'm reminded of, for example, I think Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, was talking about how, he didn't get enough masks. And of course he used it to attack the Orange Man because that's just the drum he beats all the time. And it turned out that the New York state government had a whole bunch of masks and they were just holding on to them. It's just like what happened in Puerto Rico when the Puerto Rican government claimed that, the United States government didn't support them during the hurricanes and some of the other natural disasters they were experiencing. But it turned out that they were getting supplies and they were just hiding them because they're trying to use this to sort of gain power, control resources, or destroy someone they don't like. And this is just, I think, what Dave is generally throwing in is essentially to be critical of what you're being told, and don't allow something that is real to create a situation where people can bring in, totalitarian control, because there are people that want to do that, and they will see this as an opportunity to do that, and they know they don't care what happens to us in the process. Obviously, this doesn't matter. So that's, I think, and again, I could be wrong. I haven't watched the whole video, but that's what I think the general thrust of it is. I'll have to watch the rest of it later. So,
Yeah, that seems pretty much in line with what I was thinking. Although, having watched it, it was a bit depressing because if this is a media exaggeration, or if this is a situation where things are not as bad as they seem, then the question becomes, uh, the media is in a position to do this kind of damage to people's civil rights.
yeah, but they
And
have.
and yeah, I know, but I mean, it's a significant amping up of their influence. Like before, they could get their political opponents or people they
Hmm.
didn't like called Nazis and misogynists on the internet, but now they're able to get this stuff shut down based on a hysteria that they created. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case, but if they are amping this up, to what reason? Is it just for clicks? In which case,
Well,
can we be, as a society, be beholden to a group of people who are willing to create a narrative, even if it's spun from something true, like even it
hmm,
isn't a total hoax, like there is a COVID-19, and
sure.
I have no reason to believe that there isn't, and I have no reason to believe that the hospital staff aren't reporting accurately. Um, but to have the media take something that is actually less damaging, spin it into something so damaging and so frightening that people have to take these kinds of measures that are
Hmm.
stripping them of their right to associate, their mobility, their civil rights in public, forcing them under what is in effect martial law, instituting all kinds of fines and legal action if they fail to comply, and taking away their ability to pursue a job. I mean, based on whether or not it has a grain of truth, what ends up becoming a media lie. Like that is a hugely, in my opinion, a black scenario.
Hmm.
Because going forward, that means that the media can do this again. And furthermore, the only way to stop them would be to dismantle them and to take
Hmm.
away that power. And then you get into a situation where the people who recognize that this is something that's been whipped up by the media into hysteria based on a grain of truth, but they took it and they ran with it for clicks or for sensationalism, and then used it, and then the governments ended up using it to take away people's freedoms. And if that's the case, if that's how it's being used, then we're never getting them back. And it's like, well, if this is a situation of media malfeasance, media, um, what is the right word for this? Um,
Well,
when malpractice, media
okay.
malpractice, basically. If this is a case of media malpractice, then we need to get rid of the powers that they have.
Yeah.
And the only way we're going to do that, because there is an entire generation of people who are absolutely dependent on the media, and
Hmm.
entire groups of people who are absolutely dependent on the media for their sense of what is real and their sense of identity. So, in order to dismantle a media that's this toxic, you're probably going to end up in a civil war. So, it's like this scenario is horrific. If this is a media hoax, even just a media, like a situation where the media is spinning something that's true into something much bigger to the point where it's causing this kind of a reaction, and the possibility of ending our ability to have an economy and to do work, we can't afford to have them have that kind of power. But at the same time, there's vast groups of people who rely on the media to exist for a sense of social stability, and they will fight the reduction or the oversight to the media. And the media itself will fight that, obviously, as we see with Gamergate. They're not going to accept oversight,
Hmm.
civilian oversight. They don't. They're a law unto themselves. So it's like this massive mess, and we have to clean it up, or it's going to happen again. And or alternatively, that this is a situation where most people are acting in good faith, including the media. Which, I'll be frank, with my experiences with the media and what I've seen of them, I really, extending good faith to them is a little difficult for me to do. Little difficult.
No, they don't
But
deserve
let's
any.
yeah, but
They
let's
don't
assume
deserve
that
it.
they're acting in good faith. The governments are acting in good faith, and we're just in a situation where we're stuck between a sheer cliff and Charybdis. So we either get dashed on the rocks or we get sucked down to our doom. But then the question becomes, how did we allow ourselves to get to the point where our society became so fragile that it couldn't handle an event of this magnitude? To be quite frank, we always knew that something like this was coming. There's always a natural disaster. There's always a pandemic. There's always some kind of problem that puts your system to the test, the ultimate test. And we have created a system that's incredibly fragile and probably not capable of regenerating, at least in its current form. I mean, even prior to the situation with COVID-19, the US government was doing quantitative easing, was injecting cash into the economy in order to prevent it from crashing. And I'm not saying that everything would have happened exactly as it did here, but I'm saying that there was already. Oh, do I have
Hey
to shut up?
guys, I was
Yeah,
finally
it's
able
good.
to resign up for my Feed the Badger subscription since my card expired and upgraded my donations. Sorry about that. Keep up the good work.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Thank you. I don't know who you are, but thank you.
Ben gave us 10
Ben.
bucks and said that.
Thank you, Ben. So I'm just going to continue my thought. I don't want to downplay what you did, Ben, but I'm sort of a little bit in a headspace. So we need to ensure that our system is resilient and capable of handling shocks like this. We need to make sure to keep our social fabric intact so there is more autonomy and localization. And the reason why is because these things happen, and they happen with regularity. And even though we have modern medicine, things like these kind of pandemics, they will still occur. And as we can see, a vaccine is probably a year away. And with a kind of virulence of something like COVID-19, a year away it's not good enough. So we need to actually be able, going forward, to shut down the economy and somehow reinitialize it when we need it, which means we need to start developing resilience and discipline to a degree that we've never had before, and self-awareness to a degree that we've never had before. This is what's going to be called upon us to do now because of this situation, regardless if it's a result of media hysteria, taking a grain of sand of truth and blowing it into a gigantic glass bubble of fear, regardless if it's that, or if it's a situation where everybody's acting in an honest way and the media's acting in an honest way, the government's acting in an honest way, but they're just looking at two really bad outcomes and trying to navigate between them, which means that most likelihood we'll get a bit from column A and a bit from column B, or some combination of mendacity and honest acting, which is probably more accurate to the human condition. Regardless, what we're facing is a situation where the economy is going to be flatlined, and then going forward, we need to figure out how, as a human race, to revive it. And we are going to have to learn that skill going forward, because
There's
this
another
isn't the last time
super
it
The
chat.
happens.
solution ISNT oversight. The solution is disintermediation and decentralization. We need to make sure people are aware of how much the media lies.
Okay.
Okay, yes. No, and I agree with that. But however, some people, like, they are addicted to the media. Like, I that's the only way I can describe it. So if we
Well,
get rid of the media, they're going to be going cold turkey, and it's going to be painful.
yeah, the problem is that there are people who, and I understand, because the thing about the media is it's the one place you're supposed to go, to be able to go to get the truth. But it hasn't been that for decades. Just hasn't. And most people don't want to accept that reality because they have come to depend on it as, a system of truth. Like when there's, anything going on in the world, they want to be able to depend on the media, and they should be able to depend on the media. But
or something.
Yeah, but the bubble was going to burst at some point. anyway. So
Yeah, but
lights are flickering.
but regardless of what the situation is, one, the media has to be brought under control if they are a contributing factor to this. And I've been watching what the media is doing, and I actually would agree that they aren't helping. That they're pursuing clicks and attention over the public good. Um, but again, this could be a situation where both sides are absolutely right. The left is right that COVID-19 is something that we need to be concerned about. And incidentally, after watching Dave Cullen's video, I looked up some scientific studies onto the rate of death by influenza in Italy and crunched some numbers. The latest year that they have figures for, so what I was looking at, just give me a second and I'll give you the uh so you guys can check this out for yourself. Investigating the impact of influenza on excess mortality in all ages in Italy during recent sessions, 2013-14 to 2016-17 seasons. So the 2016-17 season, 24,981 deaths. Now, a season is about 7 months. So that gives us around 3,500 deaths per season. Now, unless the hotel staff are registering deaths that have absolutely no connection to corona symptoms, which are beer bug symptoms, which I really doubt because I'm sure that they're using similar protocol to the one that they register influenza deaths, and most influenza deaths they involve a comorbidity. So a patient is also sick with something else, gets
Yeah,
influenza, and dies.
yeah.
Um,
Usually like an
but
immuno disorder, or they have
yeah,
diabetes, or
yeah, but it'll still be recognized as a caused by influenza because it was the symptoms themselves that killed them.
Mhm.
Like it wasn't the symptoms of diabetes or heart disease, or it was the symptoms of influenza, but it was comorbid with something else.
Yeah.
Okay, so unless they have significantly changed how they assign deaths for influenza versus COVID-19, they're most likely registering people who are dying of the symptoms of COVID-19. They may be comorbid with something else. So the symptoms are worse because they have diabetes or they have heart disease or they're just old, but they're dying of the symptoms of COVID-19. Now,
Mhm.
in March, the expected number of deaths from flu in Italy would be 3,500. And what they're registering is something like 12,500. So we're seeing at least a three or up to a threefold increase in deaths, which, it's not like shockingly huge, but it is significant and it is enough to overwhelm hospital resources if it grows larger. And that was the fear, I'm assuming, that it would become so large that it would overwhelm the healthcare system in Italy. So that's, I mean, so when I look at the numbers, it's like, yeah, this is actually a significant concern. Unless people there's massive incompetence going on every level. They've decided to just register every person who dies. They come in with a heart attack and they do a COVID-19 test on them, even though they're not really showing symptoms, and then they
Mhm.
record that as a COVID-19 death. Um, that seems like it would. I can't imagine that they would change their protocol for this versus like registering a death due to influenza. Like I assume, and walking through this logically, and somebody can correct me if they have direct knowledge, but it seems like hospital staff can recognize that someone's dying of the symptoms of influenza or COVID-19 versus the symptoms of something else. So unless they can't, or unless they're absolutely just like uh, somebody comes in with a heart attack, they test positive for COVID-19, which I don't know why they would do that, but and then they say, oh, this guy died with COVID-19 from COVID-19,
Well, it
which
might just
seems like it
be
would
the
be
way
really
in.
sloppy.
Yeah, it might be. It could be though, if the way that the not necessarily the medical staff, but whoever is just sort of like tracking the numbers,
Yeah, but that
is
would
sort
be
of putting it
ultimately the
down.
medical staff that's
Yeah,
feeding the numbers.
but I believe
Yeah.
that Italy's I believe that I saw somewhere that Italy's government was trying to get But there is a possibility that there could be a desire to try to get extra funding, and to cook the numbers a little bit to do so. It is
Mm-hmm.
possible. So there,
Yeah, it's
we shouldn't
possible.
leave out any possibility of corruption. But what was
Yeah.
that? Somebody was in here. Was that?
Yeah, they popped in accidentally from the
Oh, okay,
games room.
okay.
Um, it's a little bit of a freeway in here. Um, yeah, I mean there is that possibility too. But what I've noticed from what I watched of Dave Collins is that the the hospital staff were pretty quick to correct the media when they went completely off the rails
Hmm.
with attributing coronavirus. I'm pretty sure the hospital staff themselves do not want to create a panic.
Yeah.
Um, and are invested in trying to be as honest as possible. I have no reason to believe that doctors and nurses are trying to stoke the fires of fear and
Hmm.
exaggeration. I mean, you're right. Maybe Italy wants to get some extra funding, so they're cooking the books.
Yes, possible,
Um,
but there is
it's
also
possible.
there are also other factors. Italy
Mm,
is a big tourist attraction area, so a lot of people pass
yeah.
through. It's a very small country that's pretty like dense in terms of its population.
Mm-hmm. And old.
They have a lot of old people, and old people are more susceptible to influenza in general. They have an aging population, and a lot of people there smoke, and so people who have lung problems, like they smoke a lot or whatever, they're more likely to have serious complications with the beer bug.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
So
exactly. So, I mean, and they were also like even before the beer bug went through Italy, they were actually looking into why Italy is
oh
particularly prone to high influenza
yeah,
deaths.
and they
So,
also have an overburdened medical healthcare system.
mhm.
That was another thing too.
So it might
Yeah.
just be a legitimate crisis,
It could,
It
yeah,
might not just be
it
the
could just be
Italians
a
wanting more
perfect
money.
a perfect storm of things that is making Italy worse off. Plus, if you contrast that against China's reporting, it really makes them look like huge liars. So,
Yeah,
China, that
China's
is.
reporting is definitely like if I were to say which I would trust more, Italy or China,
Yeah,
no
I'd say
offense,
Italy.
China. Yeah, Italy is I think
Oh,
more
offense.
trustworthy. Yeah,
No.
but
Yeah.
it's entirely possible their numbers are completely honest. Um, and because again, they were already looking into why Italy sees such high mortality in terms of the influenza season. So this is in line with that, with COVID-19 being a particularly virulent and deadly form or respiratory illness, and hitting Italy really hard. So I just
Mhm.
yeah, so I mean there may be some fudging. I would be inclined to say that the frontline health staff, they're probably being really honest, and trying to be really honest.
Yeah.
That would be where I would be inclined to believe. And of course, the media might be getting in there and twisting their words, as the media is wont to do. Um, so, and again, the idea that what's happening is in Italy is not significant. I don't think it's justifiable with the numbers I've seen, especially when I go back and look at the actual numbers for influenza deaths that should be happening. And by the way, the 16th 17th season was the worst on record, and I used those numbers versus the less high numbers which were in other seasons, um, just to get like the worst case scenario, unless there was actually likelihood that there's an increase going on. But those are variables I can't account for. But based on just this analysis, which again I gave you um do you seriously have to destroy the freaking cardboard box now? Like seriously, if you've been hearing that thumping sound, one of my cats has decided that there's a cardboard box under my desk that must die this instant. And I've never heard him do this before. And now he's stopped. Nope, he hasn't stopped. Sorry, guys. So,
Fine. It's not that
can you
distracting
guys
for us
can you guys
anyway.
hear that?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
not very loud.
yeah, it's distracting for me because he's making a gigantic goddamn mess that you won't have to clean up. Anyway. So, it seems to be that this is significant. It probably isn't it's not something to get hugely scared about. Like if you're a
Hmm.
healthy person, like it's the likelihood of you dying is minimal.
Very much. It's basically the
Um,
same as, well, I wouldn't say it's identical to the flu, but the odds of you surviving are pretty similar. So,
yeah, it's pretty similar. And looking at all of these numbers, our response does seem disproportionate. It seems like the appropriate thing to have done would be to seclude older people
mhm.
and pursue appropriate measures for
Maybe
them
the
as opposed,
extremely young.
yeah, and extremely young. But to do this to all of society, it's just,
No,
and
it's
if
it's
that
definitely an
was sparked by
overcorrection.
the media, then again, we have to look at the powers that the media have and whether or not they should
Yeah.
continue to have
No,
that kind
they
of power, the ability to shut down the
absolutely,
economy and people's civil rights.
absolutely.
Yeah, so those are my thoughts on that. I think I'm gonna, Brian, if you wanna pull up the trailer.
Yeah,
I know
I
this
can do
isn't
that. You're
distracting
not
to
going to
you
be
guys,
able to
but
watch it actually. Now that I think about it.
no. Oh,
Well,
okay.
I have to go into SciTube, I guess. So, just give me a few
Yeah.
moments to put up.
Trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to go over. Again, I think that instead of looking at, I think both sides are right. One, I think COVID-19 is a serious problem. It's an epidemic. It was something that required a response. I'm not so sure it required this level of extreme response. Certainly, we should have taken some sort of approach or to protect people who would be uniquely vulnerable to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really I understand, and it looks like the response to what's happening has typically fell along political lines. So you have the left, who are extremely concerned about the virus, want to close the borders. I guess that's all it took, folks. And actually are chiding Trump for not having closed the borders quite quick enough, and are extremely concerned about this infectious disease and its potential mortality. And I can understand where they're coming from because nobody wants grandma to die or grandpa. Um, nobody
Yeah.
wants to nobody wants to risk it, and that's understandable because they're often the most cherished members of your family. Um, but on the other hand, I can see that the Republicans or the people on the right, the people who are very concerned about the economy, they also have an extremely legitimate point too. I don't necessarily agree with them being completely blasé about the impact of COVID-19, but I agree with them that
Is that
you can't.
happening? I'm
I've
just
seen it some
curious. I don't know
places.
if I've
I've seen
seen.
it some
Okay,
places.
maybe.
Hey,
Okay,
Brian,
okay.
I've seen it some places, but there is some extreme beliefs on the right that I have seen.
All right.
Um, just like there are extreme beliefs on the left. Although, to be quite frank, the idea that men oppress women took root on the left and has densely populated it. But then again, it's also on the right too. But on the right, I've seen some more blasé attitudes towards COVID-19 and whether or not uh, we should shut down the economy to deal with it. But they are also right. Like the right is like the people who are fiscally conservative or ANCAPs or libertarians. They're right. The impact of a worldwide depression will be enormous, more long reaching than the impact of the virus, and could potentially kill significant amounts of people because they cannot get the goods they need to survive. So
Mm-hmm.
this is important too, and it doesn't make people on the right any less compassionate or any less concerned about human life, the fact that they are concerned about the economy. So I'm seeing this kind of condemnation on the left, like, oh, you just want to make sure the GDP is, you just want that extra, so
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want to make
Right.
sure your stock
Extra.
portfolio performs. You just want that
Sure.
extra million for your. That's bullshit. People on the right are pointing out that we need a healthy economy to survive. And that's a fundamental truth. So I'm like looking at both sides and I'm like, yeah, you both have points. I can understand where you're coming from. I think going forward, the real essential thing, the real takeaway is that we need to create a system that is resilient, that's capable of handling this kind of a crisis. There may become a time in the future. I mean, maybe this isn't the pandemic that everybody agrees, yeah, we need to shut down the economy to prevent it, but there will be that pandemic. That will happen at some point. There will be a highly virulent, extremely deadly disease, virus that goes through the human race that is distributed because we're very globalist. We're a very global system now. That will happen, guaranteed. It's not an if, it's a when. And we need to be able to pursue these kinds of measures in a genuine crisis, and then shake the dust off, pick ourselves back up, and continue on like it basically didn't happen. So we need the kind of strength and resilience that people were showing, in the 40s during the Blitz, during the bombings in the UK, or the kind of resilience that some people show when they experience a complete upheaval of their life. But then when they find traction again, they build it back up and keep going from there. And we don't have that resilience in our society right now, and we need to develop it. Because again, this is a when, not an if situation. COVID-19 should be seen as a wake-up call that we need to develop the kind of systems that create resilience in the human race. We need to have autonomy. We need to have more emphasis on being local. So local communities and independent local communities, independent local production, and ensure a distributed system. Somehow we need to create a distributed system, but with a unified sense of purpose, which means we need to look from the grassroots up to develop, dare I say, a global identity of, we're all in it together. We don't necessarily need the aliens to come invade. All we need is a recognition that our entire civilization can be laid low by the smallest non-life there is, which is a virus. That can be our outside force, and recognizing that we need to be prepared for the next time this happens, because it will be worse. And the way that we prepare is by focusing on that distributed system that has some way of connecting itself. So some kind of overarching identity, overarching sense that we're all in it together, that we need to come together as a species to help each other out, but also without destroying our local identities or making those local identities less important, which is really where what they call the globalists fail, because they're trying top down. This needs to be bottom up. So okay, I'll get off my soapbox.
All right.
Are we ready? You want to go over?
Yeah, go into the side tubes. You know, you have go into the side tubes. That's already there.
I think you might have to give me the link.
You don't have the link? It's I'll spell it out for you. No, because then other people
no. Just give me the link. Just pop it in, and I'll yeah.
Hold on.
Thank God you stopped, Cat. My God, what a ruckus! He's located this box that he likes to go into. He just flattens himself out like a letter, and then he just slips into the slot. Just
yeah.
And then I guess he's nesting now. He's tearing apart the inside so that he can construct something comfortable. I mean, the expensive canvas hammock that I have above me is obviously not sufficient. He has to lie in a pile of garbage.
Cats.
All right. Yeah, I know.
All right. So Howard Schoonover gave us $5 and says, "Destroy all cardboard, meow." Thank you, Howard. And did you get the link? I put it through
Yes,
Discord.
I did get the link.
All right. So are you in there?
Yep.
All right. So let's just play. This is the Ghostbusters trailer. Apparently, Alison, have you seen this yet?
Yep, I've seen it.
All right.
I decided we would take a look at it because I think it's of interest. I mean, it's something positive that may have come out of this. I don't know if it came out of this crisis in particular, but it might have come out of people waking the hell up about what people want and are willing to tolerate.
There is, this came out in December, so it's not like a brand new thing, but
yeah.
All right, but let's watch it.
What are you doing here in Somerville anyway?
Honestly, my mom won't say it, but we're completely broke. And the only thing that's left in our name It's this creepy old farmhouse our grandfather left us in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to stop for the banana. But I thought this was interesting. I mean, it's a bit of a change in tone, so it's looking more like a supernatural thriller, sort of teenage coming of age story.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely different tone from the 2016 Abomination.
Disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
even better shot. Like that's the thing about the 2016. It looked totally low effort,
Yeah.
just awful. Like the cinematography was awful. The dialogue was. It looked like a B movie or maybe like a C and a half movie. And
Uh it looked really awful. I don't know what to I couldn't even compare. It was so like it was like the Michael Bay Ninja Turtles movie. It was just, why did you make this? And this looks a little bit more well, it actually looks like an 80s movie. So,
hmm. Yeah, but an 80s movie with some thought to the shots, the establishing
yeah,
shots.
well, I'm saying like back then, like if you watch the old even the old Ghostbusters movie from 84, there was a lot of thought and passion,
Hmm.
and soul in it. It was just,
Despite being funny.
yeah, but despite it being a comedy, which I assume this will also have some comedy in it too. Um, yeah, there was basically like, it was like, Dan Aykroyd and Ivan Reitman, the guys they were in love with the idea, and I think that's
Mm.
what you have to be if you're going to make something that stands the test of time. You have to be in love with the idea. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why'd you bring me up here?
Entertainment value?
What is that?
I don't know.
It's got a bit
Somehow.
of like Cloverfield in it almost.
yeah, they're definitely like the one thing I will say, that they're definitely kind of like feeding off of the whole like Stranger Things phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's why they have the actor from there, but Stranger Things was already kind of leaning hard on 80s nostalgia. And this is
Mm-hmm.
kind of like feeding back into itself. So, but I don't mind that. From what I've seen, this doesn't look bad, so I'm not trying to like shit on this movie.
No,
I
but we can look at its influences.
Yeah, I think that's where there's an influence feeding into itself. Like obviously it's influenced by the original film, but they're using
Mm-hmm.
the actor, that boy from Stranger Things, who's had a kind of growth spurt. I mean, he's like this kind of beanpole kid now. But he was, in a show that was leaning really heavily on the nostalgia. I would say that Stranger Things is it's fine. I think it leans a little too hard on its own nostalgia, but I think that the use of that actor is one of the good things that came out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A town that isn't anywhere near a tectonic plate, that has no fault lines, no fracking, no loud music even, is shaking on a daily basis.
Under the dining table now!
Hey, remember that one summer we died under a table?
All right, I'm just pausing there for the.
Yeah. I also wanted to like one of the reasons why I wanted to go through this is because it's sort of maybe a positive outcome that's I think not being seen as much. A positive outcome to all of the pain and destructive behavior of the last couple of years. I mean, this is Hollywood responding to the critics of 2016. They'll never admit it,
Oh,
but this is
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. So we do have the ability to have our voice heard and have material that respects the things that we loved in our childhood. And one of the reasons why I decided to cover this is just because it's a little bit of positivity, and
Mhm.
it's positivity for definitely for the community that we're part of, because I know that to use an example, um, before the COVID-19 or the beer bug really hit, my husband was just upset because he felt like his childhood was being shit on. with these remakes and just destroying the lore and everything he'd grown up with, all the stories that he'd grown up with and he loved. And there was nothing he could do about it. There was no way he could change it. It was just Hollywood after a cheap buck. And most people would say, well, it's just pop culture, right? But pop culture has become our new mythology. It has become the substrate of our understanding of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and the stories that we tell ourselves. These are the legends that are told around campfires in tribal cultures. These are the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the Greek myths and the Norse gods. This is what this is to us, and it should be ours. It should be the property of the people who were shaped by it. I know
Mm-hmm.
it. I mean, technically, it isn't. Legally, it isn't. You know, and it shouldn't be shat on for a buck. And that's really what it was with Hollywood. I mean, they can talk a big talk about how much they care about women. They don't. In fact, I don't think any feminist does. I don't think most white knights do. They care about using women in a particular way. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And and I don't see that as a virtue. It really was at the end of the day about making money, about shaming audiences into giving them money and shitting on people's childhood mythologies that they grew up with and were shaped by. And I think that it's really positive that at the very least they listen to the sound of their piggy bank emptying out and not being filled, if not the actual morality of not shitting on the uh, peasants mythology and religion,
Yeah.
because that's really what it was.
I,
Okay.
I don't know. I'm actually, I believe that the people who write these uh like highly feminist girl empowering remakes, I think that they're true believers. I think that they really believe that what they're doing is for women in some way. It's some kind of act of revolution or of heroism in support of women. I think they're true believers. I've seen that, what is it, Elizabeth Banks, and when she made the Charlie's Angels movie that bombed, Black Christmas that bombed. There was Ghostbusters. When this Ghostbusters trailer launched, the guy who directed the 2016 Ghostbusters said that by them making this movie, even though he knew about as much about it as anyone else, he said that there was a kind of surrendering to the toxic fandom that should not have happened, and that they should like make this movie tie into his 2016 movie in some way, because he felt so strongly about his all-female Ghostbusters film, as well as the women that were in it. When Star Wars died, the reason, when it all got traced back to, which I knew from the very beginning this was the case, was the lead person, Kathleen Kennedy, behind the new Star Wars trilogy. The extent of her input into those movies was, I don't care what you do with the story. The only thing that matters is I need a strong female character at the center. And there was such a fervent, um, zealous belief that it needed to be a women-centered story. I think that the people who make these are like, even if the execution is all wrong, and they're completely disregarding an entire type of woman completely, I think that they in their hearts believe that what they're doing is good because it is a feminist oriented direction that they were taking. I think that they're true believers. I just don't think they're good at making films. So
And I will say 2 points. One, I think that in many cases they're true believers in their own egos. And how they measure their ego is how well they supposedly benefit whatever imaginary creature they have constructed to occupy the role of woman in their mind,
mm-hmm.
which is incredibly solipsistic if you think about it. And then the other thing is, just going further on that point, there's no way you can benefit all women or even a majority of women, because women are individuals. The very foundation of this idea that you can construct a movement to benefit all women is, in my opinion, misogynist because it requires that you erase women's individuality at its very core. Women are best served by civil rights, equal civil rights under the law, equal application of civil rights under the law, or alternatively, traditional societies that have a balance of rights and responsibilities for both women and men.
Yeah.
So that's what women are served by, not some vastly powerful movement that's going to stamp every woman. Like you either accept what they say you are benefited by, or you are stamped out as a woman. So you either willingly abdicate your individuality, or you're destroyed. And then they turn around and say that this benefits women. No, it doesn't. Not in the slightest. That's where I'm getting at.
No, I get that, but I'm saying if you ask them, they just wouldn't even be able to conceive of that. They would just assume that what they're doing is right.
Well, yeah.
And also not enough, because they'd probably say, well, I wish I could do more, but all I can do is give you this all female.
Because they're religious people who've substituted woman for God. And their notion of woman is as distinct and abstracted from the actual existence of real women as God is. So they aren't actually benefiting women. They're just presenting what they think should benefit their ideal concept of woman, and any woman who doesn't agree is silenced. It's gross.
Yeah.
Like I said, okay, well, actually, let's just continue.
All right, let's continue.
I found it in my living room.
Whoa, killer replica.
A replica of what?
A ghost trap?
Jason Reitman, I believe, is Ivan Reitman's son. So that's pretty cool. I thought that was one of the things that stood out for me as extra cool. That someone in the same family that was responsible, his father was responsible for the first Ghostbusters, and he's sort of like following in his dad's footsteps. Try to do this movie, which is supposed to do justice. So I think that's an extra cool little deep cut. A lot of people missed. Did you want to say something?
Nope. I'm good. I actually would only say something just to ensure that we don't get hit by the copyright strike.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a ghost sighting in 30 years. New York in the 80s, it's like The Walking Dead. Your dad never mentioned this to you?
It's just my mom. My grandfather died. My mom says we're just here to pick through the rubble of his life.
I'm just pausing it for the. I wonder if the mom is Janine. I was wondering about that.
Yeah, but I think Egon is the grandfather, not the father.
Oh, okay.
But that would be interesting if they had that in there. That it was eventually Janine triumphed.
Yeah, right. Because she was really into him, right? So
yeah, she's really into him, and he was really not into anything.
Yeah.
Was approaching a human interaction with another human being.
I mean, he collected spores, so.
I'm just wondering what that honeymoon night was like, if that's the case. Oh, a new source of mucus collection. Okay.
Can I just say, this is as an aside, and you guys can let me know what you think. I like Paul Rudd, but I am getting a little tired of seeing him in everything. So I know that he is like one of the kind of like it people right now, but sometimes, and I like Paul Rudd, I do. I think he's hilarious, and he's got a great personality and stuff. But sometimes I'm like ready for new faces. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Who are you?
Call it fate. Call it luck.
Okay, I'm pausing it again. This is a slow build-up.
It's a slow build up, but yeah, nice call back there.
Yeah.
Call it karma. I believe that everything happens for a reason.
Come on, darling.
We gotta
Alright.
stop.
Yep.
We
I
gotta
just
stop
did.
for the banana.
Stop for the
Unfortunately,
banana.
that was badly timed because this is like sort of an exciting moment.
Yeah.
Where he's
Well, it looks
doing-
like they're just kind of like joyriding small.
Yeah, doing
town.
donuts in the crop fields.
Yeah.
It has a gunner seat?
Okay, or we better stop it again.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, this is definitely a different tone.
Yeah, I think that to go back to what you were saying about you know, instances of the entertainment industry listening to their actual audience. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say about this one, but it does look promising. I will say that getting like the original people who like to the extent that they can involved is, I would say, you know, a good sign that this will be decent. The other thing I was going to say is that you don't even have to go to something that's speculative. You can look at a movie that actually did come out as a result of people that made changes as a result of the studio listening to the fans, and that's the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. You know, so the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, they released a trailer. It looked like the Sonic himself looked nightmarish. It was just terrifying, you know, cartoon character with like human teeth and, you know, weird eyes. And it became like the subject of memes and criticism, and people were, you know, making jokes about it and stuff. And then the studio decided they were going to get like all of the CGI done over, all the animation, and they made Sonic look a lot more like his video game counterpart. And what's funny is that that was basically like I think it was a February release movie or something. Like it wasn't supposed to make a lot of money. It was coming out at a dry period in the you know, in the film release window, usually like a winter release. But it ended up breaking all kinds of records. I think it's like the highest grossing video game movie. I mean, that's not saying a lot because a lot of them are pretty bad, but it did way better. And that's because not only did the studio listen to the fans when they complained, but when they listened and then they fixed it, the fans actually bought tickets and went and watched the movie. And they gave them reward, basically. They paid them to see the film. And I think that that's an even better example, I guess you could say, of people like listening. Yeah, so that was what I wanted to add on to that.
Yeah, and as you can see with the Sonic movie, that listening to your fans can be very profitable.
Yeah, they did do well. They did. It's a crazy thing because
Especially compared
in
to Birds of Prey.
yeah,
or
Birds of
Harley
Prey
Quinn,
and well
or
whatever
else they-
that
however
yeah.
many times they changed the damn title.
Well, that's the thing. Like in a lot of these cases where these things are dying, and I'm telling you, like way more stuff is dying than is surviving. But it's okay because I've said this about the like the comic book industry is dying. I think Diamond Distribution, they were basically like the #1 distributor of comic books, and they are closing down because the sales are so bad that people are losing their jobs. Shops are closing. And the fact is the big two, they don't care. They're just gonna do what they're doing because they're trying to appeal to an audience that doesn't exist. And the what they're doing is obviously going to cause people to lose a lot of jobs, that they're going to lose money, and they don't care. And this is also happening with lots of other film franchises and TV shows. Like I know that, you know, like Star Trek, just whatever is Star Trek is basically dying. All these other Doctor Who is dying. Like all these other things are going away. And one of the main reasons is because they aren't listening to their fans. They're attacking them, and they're also they're making a product aimed at a fan base that doesn't exist. Because the people who are asking for change are that want this stuff to be, you know, along their sort of personal taste of Tumblr bullshit. They're also the people who are least likely to actually spend money on that stuff. So you're basically appealing to people who aren't going to give you any money, and they're not going to be a part of, as you were describing it, as the kind of modern mythology. They're not going to be a part of a participant in that kind of I don't know what you call it, that story, I guess you could say, that people who are in love with those things want to be a part of. You know, they don't want that. They want to control the story. Not the same.
Yeah. Well, I think Mia's decided that this might be the end.
Okay.
She's decided that she's given me enough time away from paying attention to her now,
Yeah.
and she's saying, "Yeah, human. It's time to stop and pay attention to me now."
Okay. So
I know I shouldn't be ruled by a cat, but everybody who has a cat knows that, you know, that's inevitable, really.
So
Okay.
I got a super chat from Tyler
All right.
Preston. He gives us $2 and he says, "Cough, Gotham High, cough." Yeah, it sounds trash. All right. So, is there anything else?
No, please, if you like the show, if you enjoy the content, go to feedthebadger.com, set up a subscription, become part of our community. It's pretty awesome in there. We have regular events.
What
What you
happened?
doing? Oh, she nearly tipped over the camera
Oh,
and
okay.
sent it off the desk, so I had to catch it before it fell to the floor. So this is extremely difficult for me to continue to speak. But yeah, if you'd like to support the show, help feed Mia, go to feedthebadger.com, start a subscription. There's also one-time options as well. We're currently doing a fundraiser, which we'll be pursuing again on Friday with some VR games and taking requests. So stay tuned for that. And that's pretty much it. Whatever you want to say, whatever spiel you have, Brian.
Well,
We can go.
yeah, sure. So I guess I'll just take us out. If you guys enjoy this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, and leave us a comment. Let us know.
Yeah, tell us what you think.
What you think, and how are things going in your neck of the woods with the beer bug and all of the hysteria, possibly justified hysteria surrounding it. So let us know in the comments.
Also tell me if I should put Mia in the other room next time.
Okay, your camera froze. I'm gonna switch. Well, we're wrapping it up anyway. Your camera froze.
Yeah, I think ultimately it may
can't
have.
do anything about it.
Yeah, it's technical difficulties as usual. But tell me in the comments below if you want me to stop allowing Mia to make appearances on the streams, so that you don't get interrupted. I don't get interrupted. I don't know if that's annoying. Cats can be. So there you go.
All right, there you go. All right, so with that said, thanks guys for coming on, and we'll talk to you in the next one. Have a good one, everybody.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.